Right, hello everyone. I'm not going to use slides, I might pick up a couple of pictures later on. I'm going to talk to you for about 10 minutes. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself and where I'm coming from these sort of things. I might make you do a little challenge part way in, and then I'll describe briefly my framework for creating educational escape rooms. And then me and Sam will have a fight about how you do a framework for escape rooms. So, in theory, I'm a librarian. So, my official job title is teaching fellow, but I'm an academic librarian at the University of Huddersfield. Although I'm now a part-time librarian, I do that 3 days a week, and then I do whatever I fancy on the other days. In terms of this sort of thing, I've always tried to make sure the people that I teach, because librarians do teach, the people I teach do as much activity and active learning as possible. And as part of that, I've used a lot of games and a lot of playful activities, and I've started to come round to the point of view that what I was really trying to do with these sort of activities was to get more playful experiences and to get more play into the learning in general. So rather than, was it exploration or curiosity? Yeah. So as curiosity was the driver there, they sort of sit alongside a bit, but playfulness is one way of encouraging curiosity, because it makes it a safe place to be curious and a safe place to experiment, and that's my sort of key driver. I probably came to that realisation 2 or 3 years ago, so now play underlies a lot of the stuff I do. Some of the things I do on me sort of days I'm not at the university is I run workshops, and Chris mentioned a retreat I did for us to create some educational escape room type activities. But I do a lot of workshops, often for librarians, because that's my core audience, but other people as well, to create learning games and to be more creative in the teaching, and loads of other things associated with that. Something I found a lot when I'm running those sort of workshops, I'll show people a type of activity to do, and then they say, "Oh, that's fab, I'm going to do this for everything." No, don't do that. So people will pick up something you show them and think, well, I'm going to do that for all the things. Or they sit at the end and say, that activity won't work for my students, so or this particular group of students. So everything you've said is complete nonsense. It's like saying, well, why would it work for everybody? You pick appropriate learning activities for different groups of students and for different learning outcomes. So something that's informed the process that I'll go through in a few minutes' time is the idea that I won't give them too many examples of how to develop an educational escape room. I'll just give them a scaffold to work within. So I'll try not to spell it out so they don't get this thing, but I'll copy everything you've said and not do anything different. And also, they tend to get carried away with the activity rather than the learning outcomes. So again, as other people have mentioned, trying to push that idea that learning outcomes are all. So, because I'm talking about educational escape rooms, not just doing some puzzles because we think it's a bit fun. Does that make sense? Right, I'm going to stop talking for just a minute, and I'm going to ask you all a question. This little book I've handed out, towards the front of it, I mentioned the name of my 2 children. Can one of the tables sort of tell me what the name of my 2 children are? Let's give you a minute or two. Just tell me what my children's names are.
Andrew the second? Andrew the second?
No. It's in the dedication. If you need a hint.
Is it Justin?
No.
Found one.
Oh, one's George. Yeah, that's the easy one.
Yeah.
That's George down there.
Oh, right, yeah.
The other one's just slightly more hidden. It's very similar to the first one, George, that people have said. It's a very similar type of puzzle.
Yeah.
Jenny.
Jenny, well done. Well done.
The first line, second line, second indent, third line, third indent, fourth line, fourth indent.
So it's got an acrostic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's
I'm
a
not
more
that deep
diagonal
with puzzles.
stick.
There are two types of acrostics. One where it's the first letter of each sentence, and the other one it's the first and the second and the third, if I remember right. So, we've got some pretty boxes in the room. I'll show you a picture of my pretty box, which is I got a local retired chap that somebody knew. They got sent to his shed for a week to make these sort of things. So he made me a pretty box. And I'll show you a few puzzles of the first escape room type experience I did. But the reason I went down the route of doing an escape room box for induction activities for the students, and because I'm a librarian, it was a live induction. It was because my first experience of doing an escape room, about halfway through it, I thought, we're stood in this room, nobody's quite sure what we're doing, we're all a bit lost, there's all this information being that we're finding in this room and we're not quite sure what's important and what's not, but we're locked in this room and we have to try and make sense of it all. All in the dark as well. It's quite a dark room. But that's just like our students in the inductions. So those of you that work in HE, they come to university, all nice and keen, and we subject them to being locked in a room, being bombarded with information. They've no idea what they're there for, and no idea what to listen to and what to pay attention to. So I thought, oh, inductions, escape rooms, are the same thing really. So as my first sort of tester of using escape rooms to see if they thought, my students thought it would be completely bonkers, was just to do a set of activities that covered the same material that we'd normally cover in a face-to-face induction. So when we normally sit them down for half an hour, and say, right, this is what you need to know, and your username will be, but they discovered it all themselves instead, through a process of puzzles. That they worked through. Nice and low tech, like the ones we've worked through today, so nice and easy and harmless for me to do. And it went down really well. So I knew it worked for my students, and I knew I could get away with it to a certain extent in my sort of activities, but I wanted to transfer that idea of this being a useful learning activity across to the other stuff which I was doing, which is running workshops for people to create learning activities of their own. So, really quickly, I set out a process that's in this little workbook here. I've not used it in anger yet. I've got my first workshop on Monday in Helsinki, of all places.
Oh my gosh, is this the premiere?
Well,
Ooh, how exciting!
so I don't know if it will work or not. So if anybody wants to take away a copy of this on the desk and see if it makes sense, and please let me know.
Thank you.
So the idea is I can run a workshop, and this is a really sort of structured scaffold for them to work within. So I'll give them the information they need to do each step, but I give them the steps, and then they throw in the creative aspects around it. So I force them up front to think about what their learning objectives are, and I make them sort of stick that in the workshops. I'll stick it on a big piece of paper on each table, but in this workbook it's actually on a sheet of paper. So that's in front of them the whole time. So whenever they're thinking about their puzzles, as they're working through, right up front, in the face, along the top of the bit of paper. He said, this is what the public will be learning from your activity. I then get to them to think about what constraints they're going to put on the game. Because it sounds really weird, but I find when people are trying to design learning activities, along with lots of other things, the less constraints you have, the more difficult it is sometimes. And especially when it's new to people, and people might be a bit scared of it, if they could think about what constraints they're working within, it can free them up a lot to actually start going. And I'll list some of the constraints down there. And then think about themes and narratives and stories, because something I found with me, the sort of tabletop game activities I do with librarians and lecturers, is they often get obsessed with the mechanics and forget about the story and forget about actually making it engaging and memorable for people to the end. So I've put in there to think about the themes and the narratives right up front as well. So they think about learning objectives, constraints and setting the scene type ideas before they think about what it might look like or what puzzles might be involved. So they've got all that laid out in front of them. I then, again, before they start to think of a puzzle at all, make them think about what sort of structure it might fit within. And particularly in this case, asking them questions about how many learners are likely to take involved and how that'll affect the structure. So often when you see sort of learning type escape room activities, they're very linear, aren't they? They're a bugger to scale up. You see how Lizzie scaled up? Tons of boxes! But if you think about up front, if you want to do it for 150 people, then there's maybe other ways of doing it, except for having lots of boxes. You could have multiple puzzles running along the same time, concurrently, that's a posh word, and then coming into better puzzles and out again. So if they've got those sort of constraints laid out in front, they can then think about the structures that would suit the sort of people that they're aiming for, and then get them to think about puzzles. So they're actually sort of halfway through before they think about the puzzles that they might be able to might have to create. So they've already thought about loads of stuff before they think about what's probably hardest for them to do. Then think about all the obvious things. So they'll do, in effect, paper prototypes and test them on each other. So prototyping and play testing alongside each other. And then I get them to think about briefing and debriefings at the start. Because debriefings is particularly important for educational type stuff. Because we want to know that they've learned something. But because I'm very much into play, I don't really care if they don't learn the thing that I wanted them to learn, as long as they've learned something useful. And the debriefing lets me find out what they've learned. So that, really quickly in a nutshell, is sort of where I've come from and the sort of structures I'm thinking about for people to use as a scaffold for creating educational escape rooms.
Brilliant.
Any questions people want to ask in the last minute?
Somebody said earlier
Yeah.
that staff were the worst at learning things and didn't necessarily, you had to work hard. The librarian's a bit better than that.
Not in the room, is there something? No. Librarians, there's something that's quite rife in academia called the imposter syndrome, where people think, well, I'm not quite good enough to do this, I'm not quite confident enough to do. Librarians are really bad for that. So, especially because librarians teach, but it's almost like a secondary part of their role. So they think, I can't do activities like this because it's scary and I'll get caught out. So yeah, librarians are really, really bad in general, that sort of stuff. But as are most people. Yeah. And it's largely fear.
I think that's quite impressive with your ISBN numbers on the front cover. That only could come from a librarian.
Yeah, well, if it works, once I've done a few workshops,
that's
I'll just release it
there
as
for you, isn't
a
it?
published thing. Yeah, yeah. And it's not a serious publication, but it's a workbook. So, as I say, I'll be using it for face-to-face workshops, and we'll spend a day creating stuff. But when somebody rings me up and says, "Can you tell me how to do that?" It's a lot easier if they can just have a copy of the book, rather than expecting me to go everywhere to get an official publication.
Yes.
Right?
How do we get a copy of the book?
You can't yet till I've broken it. Because, you know, when we do games, we'll do a prototype and then play test it and prototype, and you go and it's quite a lot. That's a prototype for me. So I need to make sure it's broken and I can approve it.
So how do we
And it
feedback?
might be a few months before sorted.
So how do we feedback?
You can feedback, email me or tweet me. My Twitter handle is AndyWalsh999, and my email address is in the first couple of pages of that book. It's andywalsh@innovativelibraries.org.uk, but it is in the first couple of pages of that book.
So you'd like feedback on these?
Yeah, yeah. If it makes sense and if I'm telling people the right things and giving them the right sort of structure, that'd be fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you very much.